Hey, J-Bone Nation! Shaming of Jay. He's not a dopey dumb bitch. He gets laid. The court jester. The court DJ. It's time to dive into the case. To the case.
What's up, everybody?
Welcome back. Welcome back. So, Jay, courts are closed for business, but we, my friend, are very much open.
Very much so.
Super excited for this. Jack, welcome our guest. We'd gone through part one of Jen McCabe's testimony. Jack blew my mind then, and we're about to get into the nitty-gritty of the testimony today. So I'm really, really pumped. Thank you so much for joining us again, Jack.
Oh, you're welcome. Listen, she's the gift that keeps on giving. As I was reviewing my notes about half an hour ago, I spotted something else that she said that I want to bring up. So there is so much in this woman.
Well, I mean, that's one of the fascinating things, and we've talked about this on different shows, Jack, where like you can watch these, you can watch them countless times, and almost every time you come up with like a new like thing that you realize that you didn't realize the first time, right? Like each time you watch it, you pick up on something.
Yeah, so, I mean, this is a word. The word is, right? Words don't come much smaller than the word is. And I had not spotted it before. And I was like, oh, wait a minute. That just changes the entire context of what she says.
Absolutely. And Jack, we can't assume that everybody that's joining us today or that will be watching on replay knows what your magic elixir is, man. So why don't you give the folks just kind of a little bit of an overview of what you do?
I look at the words that people say and work out if they're telling the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. The words that we speak, not one word we say is accidental. It's coming from a place in our brain. Either, you know, like we were talking before we came on with the show here, we were just yakking and you guys were all just pulling the words out. Your subconscious was in charge of the word choice there. That's a great thing to be in charge of the word choice because it knows how you feel, what you think, and what it experienced. So those words were just coming out, chosen by your brain to best suit what it knows. And then sometimes, especially if we're on court giving testimony in a murder trial, we're choosing our words very deliberately, very carefully, and those are not accidental words either. So I look at the words that people use and went, why did they use that word? Why did they choose that word? Where was it coming from? What did they mean by that?
I love it.
And it's awesome. And your channel is awesome. And I was just looking, you just went over 5K, I see. Congratulations on that.
Thank you to you guys for that one. Thank you.
Love
of
man.
course. I mean,
Love
it's you, but I'm glad our people are coming over. If you look in my description, I have not only Jack's all his links to all his stuff, but addition like to the hyperlink. You just click on his name, go on there and sub if you haven't already, because Jack does an awesome job, not just on Karen Reed. He's doing all John Miller, right? He's got some stuff coming up. Diddy, we watched part of that. Stephen Avery, like what else, Jack? You're doing almost.
Just Scott Peterson, one of the recent ones that I did. I mean,
how timely! How timely!
Not by accident, very timely on purpose.
Yeah.
All the way back through. I've done quite a bit on the Murdoch case, not so much the case, the trial, but the things that have followed it. Buster's interview, Becky Smith, the clerk of court that got in a lot of hot water.
Nice. Awesome. So let me set this up, folks. If you missed the first episode, I have it in the comments. So if you want to check that out, but what we hit on was the location of the Jeep, the location of the body, Karen's allegedly saying, I hit him. This is all from Jen McCabe's testimony that we reviewed. And then we went over, the deleted calls. And Jack, like I said, like I predicted, had a lot of moments where all of us were like, whoa, I didn't even like that's if you're new to Jack and you're watching us, you're gonna have a moment, I promise you, where you're like, whoa, I never thought of that. So what we're gonna start with now is Carrie and no, I'm sorry, Jen, the discussion regarding the interview and was she eavesdropping when Carrie Roberts had her interview with the police. So
which was fascinating testimony. Like
yes.
I'm dying, because it's like going into this, we didn't really have a real understanding of the nature of the relationship between Jen McCabe and Carrie Roberts. I didn't know if they were thick as thieves. I didn't know if they were kind of a newer relationship that was starting to develop. I didn't know what Carrie's relationship to John O'Keefe was. So there's just so much here that I just can't wait to hear you evaluate it, because Jay and I really felt like she was flame throwing Carrie Roberts here. She's a talker.
Yeah,
kept just like, so. All right. Without further ado, let's go.
All right, here we go.
After you created or drafted this timeline with Carrie, she actually sat for an interview with the police, did she not? That's not in the chats. I'm just asking. She sat down for an interview with the police, didn't she?
When?
You tell me. That's my question.
I'm not sure of when you're talking about.
Okay, let's start over.
Yes.
After this timeline was created on February 1st, at some point thereafter, Carrie Roberts conducted a formal interview with the police about this case, correct?
Do you have the report of that date?
We're sort of bearing the lead. She did the interview in your living room, ma'am. Right?
There was, on Tuesday, 2 officers came to the house and she sat in the other room and spoke with them.
So, using my question, she did the interview at your house.
Oh, they came to my house to interview me and she happened to be there. So they asked if they could speak with her also.
Okay.
Okay, stop there.
Did she do an interview at your house?
So this is just pure obstruction by Jen. We spoke about this last week. Is she obstructing to buy herself thinking time to think of how she is going to frame her answer and word her answer? But at the very beginning of that clip, he says there was an interview with Carrie, and she says, when? And he says, after the timeline was created on February 1st, at some point thereafter. So he could not be clearer with his when. It's at some point after this was created then. And she doesn't answer the question. She says, do you have that in the report? So that's pure obstruction. It's a question to a question. When someone replies to a question with a question, there's something going on. And he says that there was an interview in your living room, and she says there was on Tuesday. 2 officers came to the house and they sat in the other room with them. So she knew really knew. She didn't have to pull that one out of her brain. She knew there was an interview. So therefore, I'm going obstruction. She's going, right, so this is switch gears to be talking about this situation. I need to think about how it is I'm going to frame my answers and what it is I'm going to say. Jackson says, so using my question, she did the interview at your house, and she said they came to my house to interview me, and she happened to be there. Now, I've noticed this not just in Jen, but in a lot of the testimony, a lot of those coincidences, they use the phrase just happened to be there. They're explaining the coincidence before they're even asked, is it a coincidence? They're ahead of the game on that one. She could have said that as they came to my house to interview me, and she was there too, so they interviewed her. But she wants to get the story in there and say, she just happened to be there. This was very coincidental. And of course, we know from the wider questioning that's been asked of some of the witnesses that Jackson's very suspicious that this was all some big coincidence, but there was some collusion about getting everyone together to be interviewed together at Jen McCabe's house.
And I thought it was really interesting. Sorry, Jay, that
Okay.
at the beginning of the questioning, when he asks the first question, her first instinct, when it clearly had nothing to do with the text messages, which she has in front of her, that she went right to the script, you know, and then Jackson turns around to me. He's like, well, you're not going to need to look at that. It's not coming from the text. It's a question as to your independent recollection. I thought that was interesting as well.
We've all done that, haven't we? When we're on the phone and someone asks us a sensitive question and we keep looking at our phone, even though we're going, well, what? And we're going, oh crap, they've asked me that. What's my answer going to be? Oh, sorry, I didn't hear you. I was looking at my phone. It's exactly the same thing as that. I think it's thinking time that she's buying.
Dude, Bob, that's exactly what I was going to say when you said, like, she defaults to show me where. She defaults to, you're not going to trick me. Show me, like, and he's like, whoa, I'm asking you just like out of your memory, but throughout her testimony, she defaults to show me. You need to show me because you're not going to trick me. Like, that's like her, I don't know, like her trying to push her narrative or.
Yeah, I mean, I think she considers the words to be her security blanket. I think that obviously she's thoroughly reviewed everything coming into that. I mean, she knows what's at stake. I mean, we cannot pretend that for one moment she doesn't understand, especially in light of everything that's been going on around this case, in particular with her and her family and the Albert family as well, that she is highly prepped for this in terms of having a knowledge base of what was said in the text. She's not your typical witness in the sense that, as we'll see and continue to see throughout this testimony, she was prepared. You know, I mean, she doesn't give much ground, which is why I just love what Jack's doing, because we could kind of like, he's going to help us be able to kind of cut through the bullshit and see what's what.
And that's exactly what that is. That first bit is bull, because she goes, when, show me, what? And when he clarifies it, she has perfect recall of what happened.
All right, here we go.
House.
You did, yes.
That wasn't that hard. You were present for that interview, weren't you?
I was eating dinner.
You were present for the interview, Ms. McCabe.
I was in the house, yes.
And you listened to that interview, didn't you?
No, I did not.
You made sure you gave Carrie Roberts everything she needed for that interview, correct? Quote, everything she might need for that interview, didn't you?
And where is this that you're quoting from?
I'm asking you.
Oh, I'm sorry. When you quoted, I thought it was in here. I apologize.
We'll get to it in a second. Did you?
So, I mean, more of the same there. But did you notice 3 times he tried to ask, were you listening? Were you eavesdropping on there? He says, you were present, you were watching. And she says, I was eating dinner. Now, that's a yes-no question. So the correct answers are yes, no, don't know, or correct, or something really straight like that. And she doesn't say, no, I was eating dinner in another room. I wasn't watching. I wasn't listening. She doesn't take on the question at all. She says, I was eating dinner. I'm watching that. My first instinct is going to be, yeah, she was watching, because she's completely avoided the question. He pushes her again. You were present for the interview. She says, I was in the house. Yes. So now we've got a yes. So in these questions, yes is the first answer. Quite often just an indicator of the real answer to the question, even if they try and qualify it in a strange way, like, you know, were you present? And she doesn't say I was present, but she says I was in the house. And then she says, yes. So to me, again, that's me thinking, yeah, she was at least present or listening into the interview. And then he says, and you listened to that, didn't you? And she says a very emphatic, no, I did not. So finally she gets like a emphatic answer out. And then he says, you made sure you gave Carrie Roberts everything she needed for that interview, correct? Quote, everything she might need for that interview, didn't you? And she says, what is this you're quoting from? So it's your thing, Jay, of she's, you know, tell me where this is coming from. So where is this you're quoting from? Oh, I'm sorry. When you quoted, I thought it was in here. I apologize. Now, the question was, you made sure you gave Carrie Roberts everything she needed for that interview, correct? Everything she might need for that interview, didn't you? So once again, if she had not prepped Carrie Roberts, why did she need to look at where this was said? What are you quoting from? Why didn't she just say, no, I didn't prep
Right.
Kerry Roberts for that interview at all.
Yeah, and we're gonna get to it in the very near future in this cross, where I mean he flat out catches her in a lie. I mean, she starts from the position that I didn't hear shit. I was eating, minding my own business. He starts grilling her, what are you eavesdropping? You know, and he gets her to I mean, she has to capitulate at some point because he catches her. You know, I mean, she heard things. I heard things. I heard things. I heard things. I heard. Anybody can name that movie. I'll give you $5. But so it's like it's gonna play itself out. But like, why do you think? Like again, she knows this stuff is coming. She knows what he has. It's not a mystery for a witness like this on the stand who's been prepped, who the Commonwealth knows the importance of her testimony and knows what the defense's theory is, that she's coming in and just gonna flat out bullshit about what she may or may not have heard with respect to this whole conversation with Kerry Roberts. I just don't understand where her mind's at, thinking that she needs to deny initially, only later having to backtrack. It just destroys her credibility.
Yeah.
All right, let's continue here.
Did you tell her everything that you wanted her to say?
No, I did not.
Did you in any way attempt to influence her testimony before she gave that interview in your living room?
Absolutely not. Carrie is her own person.
But then you did report her progress to the Albert and McCabe group in that group chat, didn't you?
Can you show me where, please?
Sure. Isn't it true that in a group text with Brian Albert, Nicole Albert, Matt McCabe, you wrote, and this is on page 2159, quote, and we handed Carrie, and handed phone to Carrie. Remember that?
I see that, yes.
And the very next text is from you telling the group she's telling him everything in all caps, 2 exclamation points.
Yes.
And then you went on to say at 2:55 p.m., it's basically the same moment, quote, all the stuff, end quote, correct?
Correct.
So when you said a couple of minutes ago that you weren't listening to what she was saying, that was a lie, wasn't it?
We're talking about 2 different interviews. I'm talking about when the officers came to my house and spoke to her there. You're saying that I handed the phone over, so that would be a different interview. One day she was there giving an interview to the police.
And while she was there,
But I do not believe it was at 2:55. It was later in the evening. So I think you might have 2 events confused.
so either way, whether she was on the phone with the police.
Did we all spot the absolutely not?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, we need a bell for that one. Did
Yeah.
you in any way attempt to influence the testimony before she gave that interview in your living room? She says absolutely not, which, as I've spoken about before, is used as like a super no. No would be enough. You don't get more certain than the word no. So why does she feel the need to convince us by putting in this absolutely not, like this super no? And we see that time and time again with Jen and with some of the other prosecution witnesses. When these really hard points are put to them, they respond with absolutely not. I don't know why. Maybe they just really want to reinforce that these bad things they're being accused of did not happen. Or maybe it's a more instinctive reaction where they just go to their reflexive, absolutely not response. What makes me think that's what happened in this case is she says, absolutely not. Kerry is her own person. Why add that extra bit in? Why tell us that Kerry is her own person? Does that mean that she would have considered it if Kerry wasn't her own person, if Kerry was meek and mild? Would she have considered putting that testimony to Kerry? Certainly the thought seems to have entered her mind. The thought process has been there that how would Kerry react to trying to be influenced in what she said? So why did she mention that? Why did she bring up that extra part to the conversation. She then does question to a question with, "Can you show me, please?" And then on that end bit, where she says, we're talking about two different interviews. He says she was giving an interview to the police and you were there while she was there. She says, "I do not believe it was 2:55. It was later in the evening. So I think you might have two events confused." Gives a sort of smug look. Again, Bob, to your point, how clear is she when she thinks she's got a win? Right. When thinks she's on the rack, there's questions to questions, there's deceptive sounding wording, there's qualifiers everywhere. And when she thinks she's got a win, when she thinks she's got a point, all of a sudden she has perfect recall about everything that happened, when events occurred, who was there when events occurred, and what actually happened.
Yeah, in terms of her effect on the jury, which is really the only thing that matters in trials, I don't know how this plays off to her, because, or to them, as I watch, I'm often thinking, because I always think, how is the jury taking this? You know, that's from doing what we've done for a long time in court. And that's all we ever care about when we're sitting at that table. Is it landing with the jury? How is it landing with the jury? Are they rejecting it? And in her testimony, as Jay and I watched it, you immediately got the sense that there was going to be constant pushback from Jen McCabe, that she was never going to be the witness who was going to be overtaken by Alan Jackson. And it held true throughout the entire testimony, where she came back at him hard. And I'm just curious, when, you know, whether or not the jury is able to pick up on these little things the way that you are, and that you help us kind of see it in terms of a different way of perceiving it.
Here's one of quite a technical answer on that, but one of the most common comments I got in my videos, and I got one on the Scott Peterson video we were talking about earlier, where someone says, "Thank you so much for this. I always thought he was a douche, but you've actually put into words why I felt that way." And I believe that as physical bodies, we have so many warning systems in our body. You know, you touch something hot, you pull your hand away from it like that. You smell smoke, you start to go and find where it comes from, because that presents a danger to us. And people lying and deceiving creates a danger to us as well. And I think that we do some of the things I'm pointing out here and saying words like "absolutely not," or, you know, they've asked a question to a question. Sometimes I think people don't, in their head, they don't put into words, "Oh, that's a question to a question," or "Oh, absolutely not, I don't believe that." But I think this puts people on edge. That sort of deceptive talking, that deceptive language makes people just instinctively feel, you know, we've all met people who we instinctively think don't like them very much, and they turn out to be wrong uns. Yeah, we couldn't put words on why we think that person's bad. We just got a vibe, and I think that comes through in the language that we use.
100%.
So to the jury, yeah, I think, you know, each one of us is very different. Quite often, I also get people saying, "Oh yeah, I felt this person was like a wrong un, but I couldn't put my finger on why, so I gave them the benefit of the doubt." Now that might go on with some people in the jury, going, "Well, she's had a hard time, so, you know, maybe she's under pressure or really nervous." But I think by and large, she will have set off some alarm bells in the jury with the way she acts.
And let me ask you this as a general proposition. Say Alice and I are trying a case, and I said, "You know what? I really want to have Jack come in and give us some pointers in terms of how to work with the jury, things that we think in our own minds going into it might be effective with respect to a jury." In your estimation, do you believe that when we have witnesses look at the jury specifically when giving an answer, how do you think that a typical juror perceives that? Because they're like, when they're talking generally, they're not looking at the jury. It's always for a specific answer. So what's your take?
Yeah, do you know what? I mean, it's not really my field of expertise. I can only say, as having sat on a jury, that I sat on a jury and felt the power of being on the jury, you know, like the serious weight of your duty. And if anyone looked at us, not in egotistical way, but I felt, they realize our power, and they want, whether it's a victim testifying or the defendant testifying, we are the most important person in the room, or the most important group of people in the room to them right now. So I personally, I just put that as what was important to them at the moment, and that was the jury. I think, if I had some time with a Jen McCabe, I could tell her how to just reverse engineer everything I'm noticing now, take out all the qualifiers, be honest and truthful and really straightforward, and your stuff will hit a hell of a lot better. Brian Albert was very good at that. He was very good at where things were not in doubt or didn't implicate him. He was very straightforward with his answers. He really just wanted to help get the facts out, apart from things like his phone.
Yeah, and like you can tell professional witnesses, and cops are very much that. It's part of their gig. Any cop that's out there that's making arrests that ultimately turn into a trial, if it gets that far, are inevitably going to be called to testify. So they've done it. It's not their first rodeo, and it's always evident, especially from the perspective.
Look at the leaf blower and solo cup guys. They were really upfront about what they did. They realized that getting on the defensive and, over explaining what it was they did, or over storytelling around why they did it or anything like that, would have played really badly. They just got out in front of it and went, we use the leaf blower, we use solo cups, boom.
Totally. All right. And as a bit of an aside, I think everybody agrees that we love when you say the word douche. So
highlight of the show.
Jay and I are going to ask if we can pull that clip and use it as one of our sound effects, because
what are you asking, Bob? I was just going to take it, sir. He's on our channel. We could use the
hey, man,
So it's copyright, Jay. So someone in the chat pulled me up for using wrongin, which is a British phrase to describe someone who is a wrong one.
By the way, I do see we have a lot of people over the pond who are watching here, so that's awesome.
It's amazing.
So thank you everyone for being here. Please make sure you're subscribing to Jack's channel if you haven't already. It's in the description. You just click on it, go over there. All his links are there, and our mods are sharing them as we continue this episode.
And the content's phenomenal.
It's I highlighted a comment from Jennifer who said, I'm subscribed to Jack's channel. I love it. He also has great members only stuff. So make sure you guys are checking that out.
Oh, thank you.
Sitting there in your living room with the police, you were listening to her and reporting back to the group. She's telling them everything.
No, it's not correct. The one that she did with the police, she did in the other room. And the one she did on the phone, I said, she's telling them everything.
I know.
Because Kerry is an extremely blunt person, and she was giving personal feelings about the situation. And I was horrified by it.
To the police. And you're listening.
I heard a statement she said that horrified me.
And then you're reporting it back to the group, weren't you?
That one thing she stated, I reported back to the group, yes.
So you're listening in on a police interview, correct?
It was a phone call.
One side of it, right?
It was a phone call.
You're listening in on a police interview, one side of it,
Correct.
You're eavesdropping on that interview, correct?
I'm sitting with her and she's taking the call.
And then you're reporting that interview back, or her success in that interview, in your mind, back to the group involving Brian Albert, Nicole Albert, and Matt McCabe. Isn't that what you're doing?
Objection.
I'll allow it. Absolutely not. That is not how it went. I was horrified because Kerry's a blunt person, not like me. And she had made a comment about Miss Reed and Mr. O'Keefe's relationship. And I was shocked and horrified that she said it the way that she did.
You're so shocked and horrified that
I said, oh my.
I mean, madam, you've come off pretty blunt this testimony.
When someone tells you what they're not, that's probably what they are. That's the way statement analysis works.
There you go.
So we're going to statement analyze the statement there. So across that, she refers to, I heard a statement. So singular, I heard a statement. That one thing she stated, and I was horrified because she made a comment. So that's, she talks about a single thing. I remember thinking at the time, is like, she's just begging this guy to say, what was that single thing? so that she can get something out there.
Yes.
He doesn't fall for it. But in her words, it was the one thing, a statement, a comment, right? So one thing. And yet she described it in the text that Alan Jackson read as everything and all the stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Does that sound expected to you? Wouldn't you say she said the thing or actually quote what she said? But instead she's using collective nouns, all the stuff and everything, to describe what she says is one statement that came across. I don't buy that at all. I think the text message exchange, she's telling them everything and she's told them all the stuff. Both feel really vague to me, as if they're trying to keep their messages vague in case they were ever looked at. That's just supposition. I don't know that for sure. But it does not track with me that she is saying in testimony this was a single thing, and she is saying in the text she's using collective words to describe what was said by Kerry.
Now, Jack, remind the folks just how many hours would you say? I mean, I asked you last time, but you've probably done more. In total, how many hours do you think that you've reviewed Jen McCabe? By the way, again, I have to apologize. I've made you watch Wendy Adelson and Jen McCabe. I am so sorry, Jack. But how many hours are you putting into this when you have to analyze something like this?
This was, what did I say last time? 6 hours of testimony. It's sort of that part of it is all gone. So I watched that in pretty much real time, fast forwarding through the sidebars. And then I transcribe it, which again is a bit of a real-time job, although I didn't just transcribe all the interview. And then I'll sit for a couple of hours looking through it. And like I said, I had another look through this morning because I knew I was doing this, and it's a week since we last spoke about it. I had another look before and still found new stuff. So, that is 10 hours on this at least.
So at the very least, folks, 10 hours of him watching Jen McCabe, if you haven't subbed to his channel, has earned that. Go ahead, Bob. Sorry.
That in and of itself, absolutely requires you to sub to his channel. So my takeaway when I was watching that, when Jay and I were watching it live, is that the supposition that you take from the fact that she's saying everything and all the stuff, immediately brings my mind to, all right, they've clearly discussed things. What are those things? And he's gonna probe into it, but man, that got my mind just running,
Yeah, you're also just maybe think of something there. All the stuff is very specific. So if Jen just blurted out this horrible thing about Karen, then would you expect that to be described as all the stuff? All the stuff feels like that the others already knew what the stuff was, even if it's not nefarious, even if, Kerry was like, I'm going to give them it with both barrels. I'm going to let them know everything I saw, everything I experienced. I'm going to let them have it. Then that would be all the stuff. If it was this blunt person saying something that horrified me, would you call that the stuff? No.
Right. And to me, and maybe it's just my mind, the way that it works is that all the stuff means that something was discussed prior, and it wasn't limited to one thing. It was all the stuff that it just feeds into that theory that the defense is trying to put out there perfectly. Whether it's true or not, I have no idea. But if the defense is making any headway in getting this third-party culprit theory through the minds of the jurors, where they're accepting it to some extent, it's powerful testimony, because just those few words feed it. It's a seed that's planted,
Yeah, I think the way I work as well is I amass data points. So like I've said before, someone could slip up or just say a word they didn't intend, and it doesn't make them a guilty person or hiding something. But the more I see, the more solid I feel that things are happening. And if you look at what we've looked at from Jen so far, she was very evasive on deleting phone calls from her phone. And now we have this, again, feeling that there have been other conversations gone on that she wants to hide. Now, I don't know. I'm pretty certain now that some conversation, some communication has happened that Jen wants to hide, because I keep seeing it repeatedly in the things that she says. But I don't know what that hidden thing is. What I do know is it's not this one statement that Kerry's alleged to have made.
Right.
Taryn Dusty here says, I read Jack's book, The 8 Words That Liars Use, and it was fantastic. If you don't know, Jack has a book. It's in the link tree. Make sure if you want to check that out as well, as we continue.
Which features the word absolutely, which is something that she just said.
I mean, the bottom line is, if you want to become a human lie detector like Jack, you need the damn book. Order it.
And subscribe to his channel.
My God, she's telling them everything. Yes.
You decided it was so important that you needed to report that back to Brian Albert's friends.
I was horrified.
So you reported that back.
Yes, I said she told them everything.
When you were first confronted with these messages at a separate proceeding in June of 2023, you claimed that you couldn't remember what that exchange was about, correct?
Correct.
And now you just all of a sudden have this newfound memory of exactly what that text message was referring to, correct?
Objection.
I'll allow it. Yes, because Kerry Roberts said a statement and it jogged. I said, oh my God, that's what I meant when I said she said everything.
When did she say this statement?
Probably in the fall. She has made this statement a few times in reference to Karen.
You and Kerry Roberts are still coordinating your statements together.
Oh, no, we're not. It's just an opinion she has of Miss Reed.
And all of a sudden that became your, quote, everything, all this stuff.
It didn't just become it. I forgot that I had written it. And one day Kerry made the statement, and I'm sure it happens to everyone. You forget something and then you're like, oh my God, that's what it was.
I'm not sure that
Stop there.
happens to everyone.
By the way, what do we just notice Alan Jackson do? He goes, he did exactly what Jack does. He goes, you refer to as everything and all the stuff. I mean, Alan Jackson literally was just doing what Jack does. Sorry, Jack. Go ahead.
That's all right. We're going to catch an Alan Jackson lie a little bit later on in this testimony.
I had to object to Jay.
I'm going to pull out that last answer she gave there. She's asked, all of a sudden, that became your quote, everything, all this stuff. And Jen says, it didn't just become it. I forgot that I had written it. Now, actually, in her, what she said 2 answers before was she forgot what she meant by it, not that she had written it. So why the change there? And one day, I mean, so this is like, genuinely, this is like a fairy tale, yeah? And one day, and so many times when someone is storytelling, when they're making things up, they seem to use that childhood language from the books that you remember being read to you when you were a child. Not quite once upon a time, but you will find things like, and then, and as if by magic, you know, those sorts of phrases will come up. And one day is exactly, you know, this is Mr. Such and Such who lives on this road. And one day a bear came down the road. You know, it's very much
and crawled in my bed and tried to sleep.
Yeah. So when I'm telling you what happened to me, I know exactly what happened to me. I'm pulling the words out of my head that describe what happened to me. When I have to make up a story, well, I go to this part of my brain that learned how to tell a story, not how to tell the truth, which is full of things like one day, and then this happened, and so this happened. And that's what we've got there. And one day, Kerry made this statement. And then she says, and I'm sure it happens to everyone, you forget something, and then you're like, oh my God, that's what it was. So she doesn't talk about herself there. She says, I'm sure this happens to everyone. So not herself. She hasn't said, this actually happened to me. You forget something, and then you're like, oh my God, that's what it was. So when we stop talking about ourselves and start talking about you, one of two things is going on. She stopped talking about herself because it didn't happen to herself, or we sometimes use the word you to socialize it, to put people in the position of just you think about how it will have happened to you, and if this has happened to you, then it could have happened to me.
Jack, and so I want to, like, what do you take from her statement that it horrified me? So the questioning is that she now hears Kerry telling them all the stuff and everything, and it horrified me. In the search for the truth, if we're to believe that Carrie Roberts is telling them all the stuff, which is, of course, in their world, the truth, why is she horrified? What is horrifying about that to Jen McCabe?
Do you know what? I've just looked back at when she says horrified. Okay, so I was horrified is one of the quotes. I was hot. I was horrified. So she stutters on it a little bit. And where's the other one? I was horrified. Yeah, I told them everything. Do you know what? I mean, she could be telling the truth that she was horrified. But I don't know by what. So just potentially, and this is just potential, but if Kerry's saying things they don't want Kerry to say, remember, she's her own woman, so that's what we've noticed there before. She's very blunt and she's a talker. We've heard all these things about Kerry, not nice things about Kerry. So if Kerry was saying things they didn't want her to say to the police, that would be telling them everything and all of it, and would also be horrifying. I wasn't there. I don't know what happened, but Bob, great question, because if you actually look through it, there's an explanation for what could have happened.
And especially when we then, like right after, I think Carrie was the next witness, and coming into this testimony, I had no idea in terms of the actual relationship between Jen McCabe and John O'Keefe, or Matt McCabe and John O'Keefe, and Carrie Roberts and John O'Keefe. And what became evident through Carrie's testimony was that out of all these folks, that Carrie Roberts was the one that had the most genuine relationship with John O'Keefe. It was from 2011. You could see her true emotions, that this was really impacting her in a way that I felt watching the testimony. I'm like, wow, this woman truly cared about this man. And beyond that, we know, because she was not at the waterfall, she was not at the Albert home after. She had no horse in the race. She's got no dog in the hunt. Like, so I found her to be incredibly credible in terms of what she was bringing. So looking back on McCabe's testimony, now having the knowledge of what she's saying about Carrie, gave me a whole different insight as well.
Yeah, I just found the other quote. I was shocked and horrified that she said it the way she did. Not that she said it, but the way she said it. Interesting.
Because we know that she's sitting up here as a witness for the Commonwealth, and in her mind, she thinks that John O'Keefe unequivocally was run over by Karen. So at that moment in time, when she's saying it's horrifying, if it's substantiating and bolstering their story that this is what happened, that Karen ran him over with, like, I don't understand how the words horrified ever make their way into her mind if Carrie's substantiating what they're saying happened.
Yeah.
All right, go.
Sustained. Let me ask you a different question. When you were asked under oath a year ago, when things were fresher in your mind, you were asked specifically what you were referring to, and your answer was, I have no idea, correct?
Correct.
Because you didn't want to tell them that you had coordinated your statement with Carrie Roberts. Isn't that right?
No, that is not right. I did not remember what it was.
Went on to be asked specifically, do you know who you were referring to? And you said, maybe Carrie, maybe. I'm talking to Carrie. And the question was, but you don't recall this text? And your answer was, I don't remember. That's what you testified to a year ago, correct?
Correct.
But now you're talking about some memory of a disparaging comment that Carrie Roberts has about my client. And that's the everything in your mind.
Yes, the things that she was saying.
Quite obviously, what you were referring to in that text in real time, Ms. McCabe, was that Carrie Roberts was telling the police, quote, everything that you had laid out for her in this timeline meeting you had with her, correct?
Objection.
So it's sustained as to that form. You can ask that question in a proper way.
The everything you referred to in that text in real time was what you had worked out with Carrie in that timeline meeting, wasn't it? That was the everything you were referring to, correct?
Incorrect. We never worked together to come up with the story. We have the facts, and the everything was a comment about your client.
You went on in your group chat with Brian Albert, Nicole Albert, and Matt McCabe to give running updates about whether or not Carrie Roberts was actually following the script, correct?
Incorrect. There was no script.
167.
Stop there. Great use of the phrase "I have no idea," which I pointed out before, is deceptive. We very often have an idea, so I don't know is a much more truthful answer for that. Did you notice she was asked, but you're talking about some memory of a disparaging comment, so comment singular, that's what she said, that Carrie Roberts has about my client. That's the everything in your mind. And Jen says, yes, the things, plural, she was saying. So another tell there that this is not about one single statement or one single comment, a disparaging comment, but there were multiple things said, which makes the everything and the all the stuff make more sense. She's asked, everything you referred to in that text in real time was what you had worked out with Kerry in that timeline meeting. And she says, incorrect. We never worked together to come up with a story. Now, never is one of those really slippery words. It's really ill-defined. It's not we did not or we didn't work together. It's never means not at any time. But, you know, it's like we say it kind of joking, but I'll never drink again, or I'll never make that mistake again. It sounds such a solid word, not at any time, but we don't ever really use it to mean anything substantial. So I wonder why she used never there. And then at the end, it talks about Kerry Roberts was actually following the script, and she says incorrect. Huge pause. And then she says, there was no script. Now, this is really interesting. There's a theory called personal definitions. So by and large, we do hate lying. Lying is really hard to do. We'd rather stick to the truth, even if it's a limited version of the truth. By personal definitions, we mean words that we can use. And if someone says, well, wait a minute, you said that, you can go, oh no, you took the wrong meaning from the word, right? So she said there was no script. Now, what does she mean by that? Is it that there was no timeline worked through, no sense of wording or anything like that, that was just spoken? Or does she mean there was no actual physical script of paper and a story written out in front of her? Because she says very truthfully, straightforwardly, there was no script, which can be true in a multitude of circumstances. So it sounds very honest. It sounds very convincing. However, it could mean a million and one things.
Because
One thing I noticed. Go ahead.
To that point, had Jackson pivoted and used the term timeline, she would have had to have changed her answer.
I would have thought so. Yes, I think if she said didn't stick to the timeline that you guys had concocted, she may still have denied it, but I think her words would have been slightly more slippery than incorrect. There was no script.
Right.
I just thought it was interesting in that one part. She says, we have the facts. Like, what do you mean? You have the what is this? We have the facts. You're supposed to be just telling us the truth here. You have what are the facts? What are your facts? We have the facts. I don't know why that just struck me when she said that.
I think, having looked at Jen McCabe's testimony in full, I think she believes that Karen was involved in the death of John O'Keefe, whether unwittingly, whatever, because I don't sense that she is on any other mission other than to implicate Karen in this. She doesn't seem to be there to exonerate Colin Albert, Brian Albert, Chloe the dog, or anything like that. She is on a mission to get Karen into trouble, to put it into playground terms. And I get the sense that she believes she has right on her side, that she is doing a good thing, but she's, I think, at times going way too far to do that, saying she experienced things that she didn't. And also there is this weird cover-up of some collusion or communication. The other one, Jay, you picked up on it when she said it, which is not in any of the extracts we're going to look at, was she spoke about messages staying in, what was it, our little circle?
Yeah,
The inner circle. The inner circle.
Right. So just think of that for a moment. That is a phrase that doesn't inspire any large conspiracy with police officers, police chiefs, whoever. It's our. So there's a bit of ownership there. Little, I think, or inner, again, refers to like quite a small group. And circle is a closed group. It's not like a group that anyone can join or not join. So I think that these communications, certainly as far as Jen is concerned, stayed within quite a tight group of people. I think we're on to the next clip now.
Okay, let me get the. That is all right. So we're going to the butt dials. That's
oh yes, Canton, the butt dial capital of the USA.
Yeah,
of the world. I think.
Geographical oddity. Geographical oddity.
Else go with you over to Michael Lank's house?
No, it was Carrie, myself, and her daughter.
Your Honor,
Sorry, I was a little behind on that one.
Yep.
Ms. McCabe, we've talked in some detail about your calls with John O'Keefe on the morning of January 29th. Do you recall that conversation?
Yes.
I want to focus your attention on or at 12:14 a.m., moving up to about 12:50 a.m. You have that time in mind?
Yes.
You've seen the celebrant extraction from John O'Keefe's phone, which Mr. Lally showed you the other day, correct?
Correct.
And you went through the series of phone calls that were made and that appear on his extraction report, correct?
Correct.
I just want to run through those time-wise very quickly just to orient you, if I can, and then I'll ask you some specific questions about it. There was a call at 12:14 a.m., correct?
Correct.
That was a call that you indicated was answered. You had a conversation with Mr. O'Keefe.
Correct.
There was a call at 12:18 and 47 seconds. That call also was answered by you. John O'Keefe made that phone call, correct?
Correct.
Then there's the 12:29 and 44 second call that you indicated was not answered.
Correct.
And that was a call to you, from you to him.
Correct.
There was a 12:41 call from you to John O'Keefe, correct? That was
Correct.
There was a 12:41 and 54 second call from you to him. Is that right?
Correct.
There was a 12:43 and 19 second call from you to him.
Correct.
12:46 a.m. and 16 seconds from you to him.
Correct.
12:47 and 52 seconds from you to him.
Correct.
And 12:50 and 37 seconds from you to him, correct?
Stop
Correct.
You saw in his
I just want to point out at the very beginning of this whole bit of questioning, that's, I think, 13 or 14, 15 questions, and she's answered with one word. The first question she answered with yes, the rest are correct. Number one, it shows what she's like when things are in black and white in front of her, non-argumentative, not qualifying or anything like that. But when we've got someone going like that, that's great, because when they stop that pattern of answering, we can look at what is sensitive to them or where they are argumentative about what is going on, as is going to happen when we carry on.
his extraction report that all of those calls after 12:18 were missed calls, correct?
In his report that you showed me?
Correct. In other words, the only two calls that were answered were the 12:14 and 12:18. Everything else was a missed call.
I believe so. I would have to refer to it again because I've seen so many reports.
And Ms. McCabe, according to the extraction reports that you've seen this morning, comparing yours to his, every single one of those calls was deleted off your phone, correct? According to the reports.
According to that report, yes.
Let me ask you another question. Have you ever misplaced your phone?
Yes.
In life, everybody does it, right?
Yes.
What's one of the first things you do if you're with your daughter or your husband or a friend and you're in your house and you misplace your phone? What do you do?
Oh, I'll ask them to call my phone.
Right. Even over and over and over, right?
Correct.
Could be as many as 5, 6, 7 times.
Usually I hear it the first or second time.
You're looking for a buzz or a ring, isn't that right?
Correct.
And you might do that if you're searching for a missing phone, correct?
Correct.
With regard to the calls that were deleted from your phone, you were asked about this under oath at another proceeding, weren't you?
Correct.
And you claimed at another proceeding that you had an explanation for all these missed calls starting at 12:29, 12:41, 12:41, 12:43, 12:46, 12:47, 12:50. You have an explanation for that, right?
Can I see the report?
I'm asking you about your prior testimony.
And I'm asking,
About these calls,
yes, I'm asking, can I see it, please?
I'm asking you a different question. At this other proceeding, which you were under oath,
Yes.
you explained that these calls were what? These missed calls, incessant missed calls. What were they? You used a word. Matter of fact, 2 words.
I believe I used the word butt dials.
You claimed that every one of these calls was a butt dial. Is that right?
Yes.
So according to you, you literally butt dialed John O'Keefe's phone 6 times in the span of 19 minutes. Is that right?
I don't remember making any of those calls. So my assumption is I put my phone in my back pocket and that was it.
Oh, stop there.
Oh, she's so frustrated.
So you spotted there that she was doing the yes and the corrects. And then all of a sudden, when it comes to the subject of these missed calls, she starts qualifying them by saying, well, that's according to the report. That's according to the report. Interestingly, when Jackson goes through the calling your phone when you can't find it routine, she's quite straightforward with her answers there. Either there was a trap she didn't realize she was going into, or she's not sensitive about that whatsoever. I think we should talk about the word butt dials. You've got to keep up with language when you're doing this. And I think butt dial used to mean phones in my back pocket and, old phones didn't lock or anything like that. And moving around would cause calls. I think butt dial has now become a term that means more an inadvertent phone call. It doesn't necessarily mean it was made with your butt. However, when she's asked, so according to you, you literally butt dialed John O'Keefe's phone 6 times in the span of 19 minutes, right? And she says, I don't remember making any of those calls. So my assumption is I put my phone in my back pocket and that was it. Okay. So my assumption is I put my phone in my back pocket and that was it. She doesn't actually tell us what her assumption is other than her phone is in her back pocket. She doesn't finish the thoughts. She doesn't finish the sentence and say, so my assumption is I put my phone in my back pocket and made 6 butt dials. She doesn't say that at all. She just says, my assumption is my phone was in my back pocket. And by the way, she says, my assumption is present tense as she's sitting there in that courtroom. That is her assumption. That's going to become really relevant in a bit.
All right. By the way, Bob is not sleeping. He's checking his phone.
I actually wanted to pull up the timeline because the problem, and I saw that Neely had put it into the chat, that she believed that was John McCabe. Either way, that John McCabe was declining all those calls. The problem is that the testimony with that theory is that the testimony that we've seen and heard is that she was gone, meaning the Lexus was gone from that property when these calls are taking place. So like that concept, and we know where John O'Keefe is discovered. So you'd have to then believe that, because I think Neely had said, I think that John O'Keefe was declining the calls while he was in the car arguing with Karen, which in a normal circumstance, that's absolutely something you would do if you're in a dispute with somebody, your significant other, and somebody's constantly blowing you up. You're like, what the fuck? Decline, quit calling me. I mean, that's definitely something that we've all done before. However, in light of the other testimony, in terms of the Commonwealth's timeline, it does not work. I in particular, before we even get to the Google searching stuff, found this to be very, very powerful evidence in terms of the way that Jackson was able to lay it out, because it does very much seem as if that's exactly what was going on. That whatever may have happened or may not have happened in that house, but that people were looking for John O'Keefe's phone and they needed to find it, and they were calling it repeatedly. So it was a very effective line of testimony. And like, in light of that, I thought that she handled it pretty well.
I don't think she's got a lot of sensitivity to the missed phone theory at all. I think she's got a lot of sensitivity to these butt dial calls, but I don't think she's got sensitivity to the missed call theory. She's sensitive, but about what, I'm not so sure. But the missed call thing, we've seen how she fights back on everything that's going on. She would have blurted out, but that's not what I was doing on this occasion. It was just butt dial. She would have editorialized, she would have extraed, and she didn't there at all. She just went, yeah, that's what I do.
But do you think that, like anybody that's got an iPhone, and I think that she established she does in fact have an iPhone, it doesn't happen. You can't make butt dials like that anymore.
Oh, ye wait for what she has to say next.
Oh, I remember.
When you dial someone by mistake, you hit a button, set your phone down, the phone has to be open. You'll agree with that, right?
Correct.
Can't be locked, because it takes several iterations of movement to get a phone open. Face ID or password, right?
Correct.
So when you hit the button by mistake, walk away, that's a butt dial. People call butt dials. What happens with the call?
I assume it goes to voicemail.
It's a good assumption, because that's exactly what it does, isn't it? You've had a phone for a lot of years, right?
Yes.
It rings and rings and rings until it goes to voicemail.
Correct.
So in order to hang up that butt dial, you have to interact with that phone yet again, don't you?
Yes.
So if you had 6 butt dials, 7, I think it's 7 butt dials, you'd not only have to interact with the phone once to butt dial John, you'd then have to interact with it every single time to turn off that phone ringer so it doesn't go to voicemail, wouldn't you?
I suppose.
Which makes 14 interfaces with that phone over the course of 19 minutes. Is that right?
I mean, I guess I don't have it all right in front of me, but there were also text messages I was sending. So again, maybe I said, oh, shoot, I called them, and then I turned it off.
Stop there.
But your claim is you don't remember.
So, I mean, I guess I don't have it all right in front of me, but there were also text messages I was sending. So again, maybe I said, oh, shoot, I call him, and then I turned it off, is directly against what she said not 30 seconds before, when she said, my assumption is I put my phone in my back pocket and that was it. Both things can't be true. They do not exist in the same realm. The first one was, yeah, it was a butt dial. My phone was in my back pocket. I was rocking back and forward. That must be it. And that was it. She said, and that was it. She didn't say some mixture of, you know, my phone was in my back pocket. It was in my hands at the time. I was using my phone. Maybe that's what happened. No, in one explanation, it's my assumption is my phone was in my back pocket. And then in the second one, my phone wasn't in my back pocket. It was in my hand and I was sending text messages. So maybe I called him and turned it off.
Very good. Can't be both. Can't be both. Keep going with this clip.
Yeah,
or...
just the next question and answer.
For those incessant butt dials and those incessant hangups at all, correct?
I honestly don't.
Stop.
So you would have had.
So that was, you don't remember this incessant butt dials and those incessant hang-ups at all. And she says, I honestly don't. And a great tell for you is when someone tells you they are being honest, or to tell you the truth, or to be honest with you, then that is an indication, not proof, that you are being deceived. especially the first time. So if you're having a conversation and someone says, oh, I found £100 in the street today, and you go, no, I don't believe you. And they say, no, honestly, when they're challenged and you qualify it with honestly or to tell you the truth, then that's fine. I think as well, if someone says, well, to be honest with you, blah, they might be softening you up for something that is a bit hard to hear or something. But when someone says, I honestly don't, it's not proof someone's lying, but it's a huge, big question mark.
God, thank God you said that, because I say to be honest with you all the time.
Yeah, to be honest,
shit, I'm lying all the time.
You've always got to put everything in context. So when people say, to be honest with you, no, I don't fancy that, they are preparing you for a bit of candid talk. But if someone says, if someone puts the to be honest with you at the end, so I don't remember any of that, to be honest with you, that's a bit different. To be honest with you, first is kind of fine.
God, you're awesome. All right.
And
let's
that
keep going.
he is awesome.
That's the end
Please-
of that one. Yes.
Please
awesome.
make sure you subscribe, and in the links we're sharing them. They're in the hyperlinks. Please follow Jack. You can get
And
all
I
of it.
see them. They're Jay, our peeps are subbing, they're buying books. It's all happening, man. It's all happening. Keep it going, kids. Keep it going.
And also on the old Twitter, I don't care if he changed it. I'm gonna always call it Twitter, because if I saw, oh, you hit 1,000. I knew you were close. You hit 1,000.
Oh, thank you,
Awesome.
guys. Thank you.
Finally.
Oh, yeah.
All right, so
Jesus.
we are now going to go to this is the next day, day 16, the visit with at Proctor's house, folks. So here we go, and then after that, folks, we get to what everyone's been waiting for. House long.
House long.
So, house long, folks.
Objection.
3 hours after the incident, not 2.5 years later, correct?
Correct.
Ms. McCabe, we talked yesterday about this unrecorded meeting that you had in front of Sergeant Lank's home on January 30th. Do you remember that conversation?
I remember the conversation, yes.
Have you had any other home visits with any other police officers involved in this case?
I went to drop off. It was not a visit. It was myself with Kerry Roberts dropping her daughter off. There was no involvement of Mike Lank on this day.
Have you been to the home, the personal residence of any other police officer involved in this case? Ever?
Yes.
Tell me who.
Kevin Albert.
Who else?
I went to Elizabeth Proctor, the wife of Michael Proctor's house.
Who does Elizabeth Proctor live with?
Michael Proctor.
So you actually went to Michael Proctor's personal residence, didn't you?
I did, yes.
That was in September of what year?
23. I went over.
23.
Yes.
Why'd you go to Michael Proctor's house in September of 2023?
I met Elizabeth Proctor in approximately July or August of 2023. We are two mothers that are being viciously terrorized and harassed by social media. Things that were stated in this courtroom and allegations that were made have torn our lives upside down. We receive hate letters saying that they
I'm
hope
asking you
things.
why? I know you want to give a narrative.
She gets to answer this, Mr. Jackson. The door's open.
Your Honor, she should answer the question why she went to the house as opposed to the narrative behind her motivation.
It sounds to me like she's explaining why she went to the house. The door was open, Mr. Jackson.
Go ahead.
We receive letters, we receive emails, we receive calls. People drive by our house. There was a rolling rally outside of my house where people just screamed at us. They take pictures of our children. They took a picture of my daughter and put semen on it and said property of some named blogger that I think the defense is very familiar with. So that is why myself and Elizabeth Proctor got together. Michael Proctor was not home. We are two mothers trying to get through the unthinkable together.
So you were upset.
First thing I noticed before you go, sorry, Doug, before you go, I
That's
noticed
all right.
the first question was yes or no, or did you go yes or no? And she goes, and then before she gets her speech about like being terrorized, she takes a second. I know this isn't like language, but she like takes a breath and she's like, "This is my chance to give my political speech." It's just, this is my moment. This is my time to let I've been waiting for this moment, and I'm gonna let them know right now. I've been waiting for this so long. Sorry, go ahead, Jack.
No, that's a great spot. I think we might see one of those again in the how long thing, where she is doing that qualifying, delaying things, thinking of what it is to say, and she goes for one of those. It's like a politician, who's asked about the rising gas prices and says, the thing about gas prices is they're leading to the best employment figures that we have ever had, and they've gone off on their talking point. And that's exactly what I've got here. Let me ask you guys a question, because I think I'd like to tell Judge Bev that she's wrong. From what you heard there, why did Jen McCabe go to Elizabeth Proctor's house?
In terms of, are you asking, like, from whose perspective?
From her perspective. So she's communicated to us or the jury. Why did she go to Elizabeth Proctor's house? In her words, what did you get?
Because she's being harassed and she had to go talk to her about it, right? Is that what you mean? Or like she had to meet with me and her, our mothers, and we've been yada, whatever her
right. Rally around the family, pocket full of shells. That's what it is. That like they're both, especially the McCabe family, is getting harassed to no end. And her explanation is that she needed to go see, Proctor's wife in person in order to flesh this all out. What's the move? What's the play?
So you both fallen for Jen's trick.
Damn it.
She doesn't say once why she went to see Elizabeth Proctor. She tells us a lot about what they have in common. She tells us what they have experienced and what she has experienced, but she doesn't say we went to bring an end to it, discuss what we could do, even sympathize and empathize or support each other through this, or any actual why. It makes as much sense as me saying, I'm going to go and see the guy 2 doors up because we've both got a grey t-shirt on. She said what they've got in common, but she hasn't said the why. And Jen is very good at this. And I believe this is because, she's not being deceptive. She's got a talking point to get across, but she doesn't join the dots and finish the thought off. She's very good at starting the talking point, at saying the talking point, but she doesn't come to the end of it and drop in the why. So that is the only bit I wanted to listen to on that, because I just went, that is just a speech. That is you on your soapbox, taking the situation that you're being asked about, and you've decided, like you said, Jay, this is where I'm going to get across the victimhood. And there are words in there like, we are 2 mothers. Well, would it be all right if you weren't mothers? Are we allowed to abuse you if you're not a mother? Mother's got nothing to do with whether you're abused or not. We're being viciously terrorized, not just terrorized. She has to turn up the severity by viciously, but then by social media, which is not really, social media on its own cannot harass you. People on social media harass you.
She calls it sounds like
Jay nailed it just on the head. I mean, she'd been waiting, biding her time, just waiting for that moment when she could go into her diatribe. And she goes on so long that you forget that Jackson's question was specifically, which other officers' houses did you go to? She flipped the script so quickly after she names off an Albert, and then she gets it. Who else? Oh, well, I went to Elizabeth Proctor's house. That's not the cop. Like, she avoids the fact that he's talking about Proctor himself and flips it right to the wife, and then goes through her entire diatribe.
Yeah, and it's the other thing is, she says, look, I do believe there has been harassment here. I really do. But when she describes it in the second part of her answer, once Bev has said, go ahead, she says, we receive letters, we receive emails, we receive calls. So do I. It's like, there is no flesh on that bone about, we receive hateful letters. She doesn't even say that she feels scared about it or anything like that. She does say she's talking about the actions of others rather than really talking about how it makes her feel. She does say it's torn our lives upside down. Strange thing. She's talked about, some of the specific incidents, which don't sound very pleasant at all. She gets in, I think the defense is familiar with, this was a bum jab at Jackson and at Karen, I guess, but it is kind of an ill thought through bit of a soapbox that she's got on with that one.
And Jay and I have been very clear. We're obviously, we would never ever support anybody going and harassing witnesses. But the one thing that I always noticed about every hearing that happened in this case, and I'm talking pre-trial, while all this stuff was going on with the people screaming at them with megaphones, is that they always appeared at the hearings, which I've never had a case in my long career where witnesses, I've had victims show up, and I'm talking about the victims of, like, obviously not in murder cases, because that would be quite a thing. But in cases where there's victims, whether it be domestic violence, what have you, but victims that are alive and well that show up at every hearing, to have witnesses in a case show up at every single hearing always struck me as odd. It always did. They were at every hearing. It was it really fueled the fire. Like every time there was a hearing, it would create this just chaos outside that courtroom, and they just dug in, and I don't know if it was a thing from their perspective. Well, screw these people. They're not going to stop us from going, but why? Why are they showing up at every single hearing? John O'Keefe wasn't their family member. These were just people that knew him. Some of them knew him well. Some of them didn't know him that well. But I always found that is interesting. And I never really understood why they would want to fuel that fire if it was so impactful on their lives. It's an easy thing to say, all right, well, you know what? I'm going to have my day in court. I'm going to be able to get on that stand and testify. Why subject myself and my family to this type of abuse if it's very easily avoided? I mean, is it like, I'm not going to let the terrorists win type situation? I don't know. I always just it was one of those things where I just thought it was interesting.
By the way, since we're done with that clip, folks, you know where we're at. We are at the finale. This is part 2, the moment you have all been waiting for, the amount of hours that Jack is, all you being here. We thank you so much. Please subscribe to Jack. Here we go. Getting into House Long, folks. Let's see what Jack thinks about this testimony.
That you started searching for stuff.
Correct.
So if there's GPS, that you've seen the forensic extraction or part of it, correct?
Which one are you referring to?
The forensic extraction of your phone.
I saw what you showed me yesterday from Celebrate.
That's what I mean.
Okay.
From Celebrate, part of it.
I saw, the phone calls, yes.
Okay. You're aware that extraction shows that you got home after 2 a.m. or so. So that would be generally correct.
Correct.
The Celebrate extraction shows from your Apple Health data that you actually went up a set of stairs. That would be accurate, correct?
Accurate.
The Celebrate data shows that you actually logged into your phone, did a login, either Face ID or a passcode, opened up the phone. That would be accurate.
Correct.
The Celebrate data shows that you were engaging with an app called Safari to engage some Google searches, correct?
Yes.
That would be generally accurate as well, correct?
Yes.
So after you opened up Safari, you indicated that you Google searched something about Ozone basketball. Is that right?
Yes.
That was sometime after 2 a.m., right?
Yes.
What was so important about Ozone basketball at 2 a.m. that it couldn't wait until the morning? Why did you search it then?
Well, first I was home, I was wide awake, and I had been texting about a basketball chat, and basketball was clearly on my mind. My daughter had been invited to join a team. I didn't know much about the team, so I just was Googling to see, because the woman who had given my daughter the offer had wanted an answer.
So you say that basketball was on your mind, correct?
Yes.
Was there anything else on your mind in that early morning hour time frame?
Don't believe so.
Ms.
Stop.
McCabe, if you wanted to know,
Just noticed something else. So we get to the question. So again, we see that pattern where the data is there in black and white, and she is just correct, yes, correct, yes. All the easy stuff, very simple to deal with. What was so important about Ozone Basketball at 2 a.m. that it couldn't wait until the morning? Why did you search it then? And she says, well, first I was at home. Is that a prerequisite of searching for basketball at 2 a.m. in the morning? You know, first I was at home. So I don't know. That I think, to be fair, she knows what's coming. She knows this is the big one. So how nervous is she feeling? How carefully is she picking her words? But what was so important about Ozone Basketball? Why did you search it then? First, I was at home. Really strange. Was wide awake. And I had been texting about a basketball chat, and basketball was clearly on my mind. It's clearly is one of those persuasive words. It's not clear to me that basketball was on your mind. You know, she is trying to get across to us. Basketball was clearly on her mind. My daughter had been invited to join a team. I didn't know much about the team. So I just was like Googling. Just is a word that always puts me on red alert. Just was like Googling. Just as this use is kind of a minimizer. The thing, it was a really small thing that was happening. I was just Googling about basketball. Don't look anywhere else, or don't, think there's any more to this. I was just Googling because the woman who had given me the offer had wanted an answer. I mean, I don't know what this woman's timeline was like, but it was 3 a.m. in the morning, the deadline, so she had to do it at 2 a.m. in the morning. I don't know. It's quite at best, nervy explanation. At worst, she is trying to take us down the basketball route, and that was all that was on my mind there.
Basketball Jones.
And then
Basketball Jones.
She is asked, was there anything else on your mind in that early morning time frame? And she says, don't believe so. So she doesn't say, I don't believe so. I think it is just, don't believe so. So there's no ownership of what was there. And look, given the evidence we've heard so far, there was 7 missed calls to someone she describes as a dear friend, not an hour and a half prior to that. He was supposed to be turning up where she was, and he showed, or she thought he showed, she was outside in the car. Then she tried to call him, and he didn't answer any of the calls in her telling. And yet when she gets to bed and she's Googling basketball, in her words, none of that is on her mind at all. No matter how innocent she may have thought that they had an argument and ran off. Well, my friend's having an argument with these other half. Wouldn't that be, just something on your mind? But she says, I don't believe so as well, which is not, no, there wasn't. It's just, I don't believe so.
in general, how long it takes for a human being to pass away because of exposure to extreme temperatures, right? If you wanted to know the answer to that, what would you Google search? What phrase would you use?
I'm not sure. All I recall is what the defendant asked me to Google in the morning.
If you wanted to know, I'm asking a different question.
Mm-hmm.
If you personally wanted to know, how long does it take for a person to die of exposure due to extreme temperatures, what would you put in? What phrase would you use?
Objection.
Sustained.
Well, we don't have to guess at the phrase that you would use if you wanted to know something about dying of hypothermia, do we? Did you actually Google searched it?
Objection.
Sustained. Ask that differently, please.
Did you, in fact, use a phrase to Google search how long it takes for someone to die of extreme temperatures?
I did in the morning at the request of your client.
Okay. And what phrase did you use?
Objection.
I'm not sure.
Stop there.
Really?
Correct.
Oh my word. Right. We know the game that's being played here. We know she knows, and she's going to tell us later that she does know. So what we can say is when Jen is, look, I'm not sure. Deceitful at best, potentially a lie, but she says, I'm not sure twice. when asked what phrase did you use, even though we all know it's coming. And then twice in that segment that we watched there, and you will just now watch out for this all the way through. I'm not sure. All I can recall is what the defendant asked me to Google in the morning. And I did in the morning at the request of your client. Now, I think every single time she says that she Googled this phrase, she mentions that it was at the request of Karen. Now, what's going on there? There's a reason we repeat things over and over. Is it that Jen wants to completely disassociate herself with these because it was Karen's? But why not just say it once? Why not just say once it was Karen that asked me to do this? Why does she say it every single time? I got it in my head. It doesn't implicate Karen anymore because this is in her telling John is in the cold. It's a very legitimate thing, no matter what has happened, for Karen to ask Jen to Google. So why does she want to say every time this is mentioned that she made the Google search about how long to die in the cold at the request of Karen? Why is it important? I think you know what I'm saying. Did she make some of those requests not at the request, or some of those searches not at the request of Karen?
I was
2.5 years of this, you don't know the phrase that you used?
Objection, Your Honor.
there's so many lies and
There's no
misconceptions
question.
on social media.
Question.
Oh, I apologize.
Okay.
Are you telling me you don't remember what Google search you put in?
Karen was screaming. My hands were shaking, and she was saying, Google hypothermia. How long does it take to die in the cold?
And what phrase did you put in your phone? I'm just asking you to say it.
Why don't you show me it?
You literally don't remember?
Again, she was screaming, Google hypothermia. How long does it take to die in the cold?
How about,
And I picked up my phone and I started Googling.
and you literally to this day, right now, under oath.
So you can see the repetition there, that every single time it's Karen's request to do this Google searching. What interested me in just that last bit that we heard was she says, again, she was screaming, Google hypothermia. How long does it take to die in the cold? And she says, and I picked up my phone and started Googling. Interesting. That's literally, she'd have to pick her phone up from somewhere. It wasn't in her hand. She just called 911. It feels to me like that is maybe constructed language rather than remembered language. I got out my phone if it was in your pocket, but picked up my phone. Look, could have been they were in the back of a cruiser and the phone was on the seat. It could have been, but I do wonder that I picked up my phone just jarred with me in terms of her telling of this. She's just called 911. Karen is screaming and Googling. And then she kind of very calmly picked up my phone and started Googling. The two things, they do not mesh there for me.
And she just won't answer the goddamn question. It's a yes or no. It really is. Like, are you telling me you don't know what you Googled? Like, and she just goes into these long diatribes. Karen was hysterical. Our hand, it's like she just won't answer the question. Of course I remember what I Googled. Of course I remember. It's now become like a phrase that's on t-shirts all over the country. It's like the most phrase, like Haas is actually going to become a word in the dictionary. I mean, come on.
Are you standing by for Alan Jackson's lie?
Yes, let's wait for it. Here we go.
It's coming in the next section.
You're saying you don't remember that phrase that you used.
Objection.
I'll allow it.
Is that what you're saying?
I'm saying that at her
Do you remember it or do you not, Ms. McCabe? That's a simple question.
that morning, I don't remember specifically what I Googled, but I do know what you've put out to the social media.
How about this? Hoss long to die in cold. Does that sound familiar?
Yeah, it's been
Why
everywhere
does that sound so familiar?
because you've put it out in social media.
Well, I haven't put anything out in social media because I don't personally have social media.
I'm sorry, Turtle Boy did.
So if the world happens to know it,
Mhm.
that's not on me, is it?
I guess not.
I guess not. Hoss long to die in cold is what you put in to the Google search, right?
If you say so.
Is there a reason that you don't want to admit to that?
Absolutely not.
It's a simple question, right?
No reason.
Huge, big, absolutely not. And I think almost that is proof that absolutely not is a lie. There is a reason she doesn't want to mention it, because she wants to avoid that subject entirely, as we've seen from the avoiding the question all the way. She's asked, "Do you remember it or not? Do you, Miss McCabe?" That's a simple question, and she says, "That morning, I don't specifically. Sorry, that morning, I don't remember specifically what I Googled." Why did she say that morning at the start of it? Why did she qualify that with, I don't remember that morning, I don't remember what I Googled. I was interested in why that answer led with that morning. Then she says, I do know what you put out on social media. It's been everywhere. So she's actually saying, and she's seen the report. She knows what it is. So she's playing a game here. And then this is Alan Jackson's lie, but I'm going to talk you through this. She says, because you've put it in social media, and he says, I haven't put anything out in social media because I don't personally have social media. I'm sure we've all seen that everyone has found his social media, his LinkedIn, his Twitter, his Instagram. And remember, I talked to you about personal definitions with the script earlier. I think he would think that he got away with that because those are professional social media. So I don't personally have social media. Like, I'm not on there tweeting about sports or taking pictures of my food and snapping them for everyone. I think he would get away with that, but he's been extra. He could have just said, I haven't put anything out on social media. Boom. So he's a bit sensitive about that as well, because he had to qualify and build on what he said and go extra with, I personally don't have social media. Interesting. And then that whole section finishes with an absolutely not.
Yeah,
Now-
I mean, the difference with Jackson is he's not under oath. Kind of a big difference. Yeah, no, but it's a fascinating interchange between these two with this thing. Man, she's just giving so much resistance to it. Whether it's true or not, it gives it credibility. You know, that's the problem. And again, we have to look at everything from the perspective of a juror. Like, it's not about us. It doesn't matter what we think. Like, what is the jury taking from this, that she's so adamant about just not admitting to what she Googled? It would have been so much easier for her to say, yeah, I Googled it in the morning. I made a typo and I re-Googled it again, which obviously gets us into what I love. Like, this next portion is phenomenal.
Yeah.
So say it. What Google search did you use?
Objection.
Sustained.
You were seeking at some point to Google how long to die in the cold, correct?
Correct.
And you made a mistake and mistakenly typed "Hoslong to die in cold," correct?
You could show me it. I'd appreciate it.
You later Google searched. May I approach, Your Honor?
Yes.
It's interesting that she thinks she's going to trip up Alan Jackson, but like, I'd appreciate. He's like, I'm not falling for that shit. Let's keep. It's just the back and forth between them is just so interesting. All right, like, I can fast forward this.
Upstairs.
That report and tell me if that refreshes your record. Page from a. May I have that? Is the actual search phrase? Does
Yes.
that now refresh your recollection?
Yes.
But I'd like to have this marked as next in order. Exhibit, please.
Is there an objection, Mr. Lally?
No, Your Honor.
Jim?
Oh god, they got to mock the evidence.
Yes.
Nightmare that is.
Objection.
Yes.
I know it's a little bit small, Mr. Basin. You see this column,
Yes.
third column from the fourth column from the left, some dates, some data, and then a Google search, correct?
Correct.
What does that Google search say?
House long to die in cold.
Now, you indicate that you did that, you made that search at 6:23 a.m., correct?
Correct.
And then you indicated that you did it again thereafter at 6:24, correct?
Correct.
At 6:24, you misspelled the phrase and you spelled it as follows: how long TI die in CIKD, correct?
Correct.
Now you claim that those two searches were at 6:23 and 6:24 a.m. respectively, correct?
Objection.
Phrase it differently.
Sure. You've indicated under direct examination that these two searches were at 6:23 and 6:24 a.m., right?
I don't know if I gave exact times, but I said it was in the morning and Karen had asked me to do it.
And you claimed that you searched it because Karen was screaming at you and yelling at you, Google hypothermia, and you Googled how long does it take for a person to die? I'm sorry, she said something like, how long does it take for a person to die of hypothermia? And you Google searched it at 6:23 and 6:24. Is that right?
Again, I'm not sure about the exact times. I just did it after Karen asked me to do it.
Would you
Stop there.
go with the idea that those were about 30 seconds?
We've got this repeated thing again, that is Karen that asked her to do it. Every time she mentions these, this is because Karen asked me to do it. And once more, we've got a repetition of in the morning. It's very important for her to use that phrase when she's talking about these searches. She said, I don't know if I gave exact times, but I said it was in the morning. So we've got around these, she repeats they were in the morning, and she repeats Karen asked me to do it.
Listen, I'm gonna add. Okay, there's no way in hell that Karen Reed is walking around in the state that we see her in on the dashboard cams, like a chicken with her head cut off. That she's saying the words "how long to die of hype." She's saying what? Like, I'm gonna ask the chat in real life. What if you're asking somebody to Google something and trying to get the answer to that question? What are you saying? And it sure the fuck isn't how long to die of hypothermia in the cold. It's how long to freeze to death. How long does it take to freeze to death? That's what a normal person is saying. There's not one part of my being that believes that Karen Reed was saying that long extended phrase using the word hypothermia in the state of mind that she was in. I mean, we know where she was at all over the place. Like, that in and of itself, to me, was absolute bullshit.
And you've got that thing again where, and Jen does this a lot, where she tries to create this chaotic scene, hysteria, screaming. She's going to go on and talk about her handshaking in the freezing cold and so on. And yet at other moments like I picked up my phone, no neighbors came out. It's in her telling is very smooth and it's all very calm and things are happening in a very orderly direction. And that in the contrast between those things interests me.
Seconds apart.
Okay.
And you're aware, Ms. McCabe, that both misspellings of that phrase result in the exact same search results, don't they?
I'm not aware of that, no.
Well, you Googled them, ma'am. You're looking on your phone and you Googled how long to die in cold and how long to die in CIKD. Both of those. You Googled them, right?
I did, yes.
And they result in the exact same search results, don't they?
I have no idea.
So my question to you is, why the two searches?
She was standing next to me screaming, shaking my hand. My hand was cold. I was trying to Google it. Obviously, maybe whatever came up first didn't make sense because I had some misspellings, so I did it again.
So how long to die in cold results in articles concerning dying of exposure, doesn't it?
We never got the chance to read it.
Stop here.
Well, you're the one, when you say we.
By the way, as a extreme irony, my transcription software on one of the how long to die in the cold has transcribed it as how long to die in the court. which is
The irony.
yeah. So she is asked, and they result in the exact same search results, don't they? And she says that phrase, "I have no idea," which is not an "I don't know." It is a minimization for. No, I'm just going to say I have no idea. It's really hard to prove that someone has an idea. It's an easy one to get away with, but it tends to indicate that someone is being a bit deceptive. My question is to you, why do the two searches? She was standing next to me screaming. Again, we've got this chaotic thing, shaking my hand. Her hand, my hand was cold. I was trying to Google it. Obviously, maybe whatever came up first didn't make sense because I had some misspellings, so I did it again. Now, is it obvious or is it maybe? She says, obviously, maybe. Obvious is another one. If someone uses the word obviously, pay attention, because it's used so often in manipulation or getting to convince you down one route of discussion. When someone says something's obvious or obviously this, then our brains tend to go, oh, it's obvious. Is it? I better follow down that way. I'd be stupid to question it if it's obvious. And quite often it's not obvious. So when someone says obviously, pay attention, because there is every chance that it is not obvious and they're having to flag to you it's obvious so that you don't question it. But anyway, this is obviously maybe. So obviously, very certain, maybe, whatever came up first. So again, whatever. So there's so much vagueness in this. So I did it again. She's asked, so how's long to die? The results in articles concerning dying of exposure. And she said, we never got the chance to read it. If she never, or we never got the chance to read it, then why did they do the second search? I think he asks that exact question, but her wording is contradicting herself. So whatever came up first didn't, she says maybe, to be fair, maybe whatever came up first doesn't make sense, but that maybe can only be true if you read it. But she says in black and white, we never got the chance to read it. So she's contradicting her own logic as she talks here. It's not, again, when we come to these really crucial stress points of her evidence, her answers are not clear and they out-qualify themselves at times.
Well, the brilliance of Jackson's questioning in that particular, and as a defense attorney, I loved it. It was that it's true. Google, anybody who uses Google knows that Google has the ability to be able to correct our typos. And both of those searches, replete with whatever typos are in there, are going to result in the exact same search, meaning that whatever she typed with Haslong to die, because the first one is the TI in the CLKD or whatever it is, it's going to result in, we're showing you the results of how long to die in the cold. That is what is going to happen with Google. So yeah. Jackson's point was, you're getting the same, no matter what typos you have in both those search terms, you're getting the exact same results because that's what Google does. Yeah. You know, and she can't answer it. It's an unanswerable question for her, is the reality of it, you know?
Yeah, it's very sensitive.
Who's we?
Karen and myself.
Well, you're the one holding the phone, Ms. McCabe.
Correct.
So you're looking down at your phone and you see exactly what comes up, correct?
I don't remember exactly what came up.
Well, what came up was something about dying of hypothermia, didn't it?
That's what she asked.
So why do it again? Why do it again, Ms. McCabe? You had the results. Why the second search?
I cannot answer that beyond telling you that my hands were frozen. She was shaking me and screaming at me.
And you see...
Stop there.
The time, you scroll up.
I was really interested in that last answer there. So why do it again? Why do it again, Miss McCabe? You have the results. Like, why the second search? And this is not a plain out, I don't know, or it was really confusing. It was, I cannot answer that. Now, is that an admission that if I actually say the real answer, there's consequences? So I cannot answer that beyond telling you my hands were frozen. And again, she starts these thoughts off but she doesn't finish them. She doesn't say, my hands were frozen, so my typing was all over the place. Or even, we've all had really cold fingers. Well, actually, I live in England, so I've had really cold fingers whilst I've been out typing on my phone and done all sorts of stupid things because my fingers won't actually work because they're so numb. But when she puts these things out, she doesn't finish the thought off. You might get the impression that she's saying, my fingers were so cold, my typing was absolutely everywhere, or I couldn't, I pressed on the advert for, life insurance rather than the hypothermia results. She doesn't say any of those things, but she can't remember lots of things, but she can remember her fingers were frozen at that point. She can remember that she had whatever it is, trouble typing or whatever, but she can't remember lots of things. I cannot answer that beyond telling you my fingers were frozen. Does not answer the question, but tells you I am not going to answer the question.
Yeah, and it's like I can't type one sentence in my phone without a typo. What the old fat thumb shit. There's not ever a time, cold, warm, the comfort of my bed, whatever the case may be. I constantly have typos in there. The fact still remains that if I'm Google searching something, I'm typically, if I'm close enough, I'm getting the result that I'm looking for without having to retype it.
Yeah,
there is no answer for that question for her, which is why she avoids it at all costs, because there's no sufficient answer, at least in my book. And I'm curious, for every juror in that box, who all, I'm assuming, have cell phones, they're thinking the same thing. It was like, that was the biggest home run of the entire cross-examination. I felt was that those two questions by Jackson. Why did you do it again? And she just can't answer the question.
And by the way, when Bob's Googling, sometimes it's, why are there two different streams coming out of two different audio coming out when I'm live streaming? Why do I have 60,000 tabs open and can't figure out why I've
always
done wrong?
tech, Jay.
All right, let me continue.
Well, actually, Jay is my Google search. Jay, can you explain to me what the fuck is happening right now? Thank you.
Why can't I hear the noise out of my computer? Jay, can you
According to the cell brain data, you see this first search that says hostile to die in cold?
I do.
What's that time?
You've got it's right over at 2:27
AM or PM?
a.m.
Ms. McCabe, you made that search at 2:27 a.m. because you knew that John O'Keefe was outside in your sister's lawn dying in the cold, didn't you?
Absolutely not. I did not make that search at that time. No.
Realized the next morning, after John was discovered, after 6 a.m., that you had an incriminating search on your phone, didn't you?
Absolutely not.
To cover your tracks, you searched it again in order to overwrite the original search at 2:27, correct?
Again, absolutely not.
But you were nervous and you screwed it up. So the first search you made at 6:23 was hostile to die in CIKD, wasn't it?
No.
When you see the search right there, correct?
I see the search, but I disagree with your narrative.
And what's the time frame of that search?
6:23.
And you agree that that time frame is accurate, right?
Again, it's what the report says.
And that comports with your memory of that morning, about 6:23 in the morning and 51 seconds.
Correct.
There's a second search, correct?
Correct.
And this one at 6:24 says hostile to die in cold. 6:24:16, correct?
Correct.
I'm sorry, 18. I was up that bridge. And that comports with your memory as well.
I remember Googling it at the request of the defendant. Yes.
About 27 seconds apart, correct?
Yes.
But the reality is Your first search didn't comport with the 2:27 a.m. search, did it? It was a different spelling, wasn't it?
I never searched to 227. That is not reality.
But the 6:24 search did exactly mirror the search that, according to this report, took place at 2:27, correct?
I'm sure Celebrate will be able to explain it to you. I can't.
And then of those 3 searches, one of them ended up deleted. Isn't that right?
I never deleted any search.
Stop there. Bits I want to pull out from there are she's asked if this comports with her memories, and she says, I remember Googling at the request of the defendant. So Karen gets the blame for every single Google that happens. But she's asked, does this comport with your memories? And she's like, I remember Googling. Be always really careful of people who tell you what they remember versus what happened. They are slicing their memories up into things I remember and things I don't remember. Amber Heard at her the trial with Johnny Depp, she was amazing for that. She would talk about things and she would split them up into things that she remembered happening, i.e. maybe it didn't actually happen, and things that happened, i.e. maybe those are things that happened, and she remembers Googling that. She can't remember a lot, but she remembers Googling that at the request of the client. And then of those 3 searches, one of them ended up deleted. Is that right? And she says, I never deleted any search. Now, that started off with 3 absolutely nots and ends up with a never. So it's like boom, boom, boom. Not proof that someone's lying, but the deceptive language is really on fire with her just now. And it's one of those 3 searches. One of them ended up deleted. Is that right? I never deleted any search is curiously not specific compared to the thing that's put to her, which is about 1 search. And she goes, I never deleted any search. It's never, so unreliable. And any search, whatever, what in your life, that's literally what that means. We cannot, that's not a reliable denial of what was put to her.
Very interesting. Keep going with this.
Yeah, there's just one segment left, and then we're all done.
Oh, awesome.
Take a look at the Celebrate report. Top search. And the column marked deleted. What do you see?
I see a yes.
Ms. McCabe, the reason you deleted that 2:27 a.m. call is because you realized that if you were caught Googling how long it takes for a person to die in the cold 3.5 hours before John's body was found, that would incriminate you, wouldn't it?
Objection.
The objection sustained.
Did you delete that search because you knew that you would be implicated in John O'Keefe's death if that search was found on your phone?
Objection.
Could you answer that, please?
I did not delete that search. I never made that search at 2:23. I never would have left John O'Keefe out in the cold to die because he was my friend that I loved.
But he's not your family, is he?
Family and friends.
Is he not
Objection.
Sustained.
You acknowledge that you made the search at 6:23, don't you?
In the morning I did, yes.
You acknowledge that you made the search at 6:24.
Multiple times in the morning, yes.
Of the 3 searches that show up that were all found on your phone, the one that you disavow is the one that took place at 2:27 a.m., which would implicate you and exonerate my client, correct?
Objection.
Sustained. Can I ask it differently, Mr. Jackson?
Of those 3 searches, there was only one marked deleted. Isn't that right?
Correct.
That was the one at 2:27 a.m., correct?
I wouldn't even know how to go in and delete a
That's not
search.
what I asked you.
Mm.
The one
Stop there.
according to the Celebrate report that was
To me, that was the "Did you order the code red?" moment of this trial. Like he was going to keep coming at. Sorry, go ahead, Jack.
No, that's all right. Well, keep going.
Like he was going to keep coming at her just like that, just like, did
Yeah.
you order waiting for her to like flip out on him and like give him something.
I've got 2 bits from that last exchange. I did not delete that search, says Jen. I did not delete that search. I never made that search at 2:23. I never would have left John O'Keefe out in the cold to die because he was my friend that I loved. Now, that sounds very heartfelt, but the implication there is she would leave anyone else out in the cold to die if they weren't her friend.
Yeah.
Which I don't think is true, by the way. I don't think Jen is that horrible a person. What I think that is a cliche, a point that she wants to make, to get across. She hasn't really thought it through. I do not think for a second she would leave anyone to die in the cold if they weren't a friend. But I do not think that, I think that negates any feeling that is behind that. There is lots of nevers in there. I never made that search. And then the last one, Jay, like you pointed out, she says, I wouldn't even know how to go in and delete a search, but she knows you have to go in to do it.
Ah.
Yeah, well, plus it's ridiculous.
I mean, yes, but
I mean, anybody that has a cell phone knows how to delete a search. It's like that. The ridiculousness of that statement just undermines everything she says. And like, I want to know what your take is on when she makes the statement, I would never have left John O'Keefe there in the cold. Because I loved him and he's my friend. And then Jackson comes back at her, but he's not your family. And then she responds with pauses, pregnant pause, family and friends. Like
yes,
I didn't even know what that answer meant.
Well, I think it follows on from I never would have left John O'Keefe in the cold to die because he's my friend that I loved, which I think is meaningless. I'm not dissing the sentiment behind it. I don't think that she's lying. If she knew John O'Keefe was lying in the cold or whatever, she would have just left him there. But what I think is going on is she said that as a talking point, as a thing that she wants to get out. It's very much like the witnesses saying, he never came in my house and I wish he had. It's that thing of, we all cared for John, so therefore nothing bad could have happened through us. And I think then it's just imagine the thought process. I've said this, what I think is a zinger, a winning line. And Jackson goes, yeah, but he's not your family, is he? And there must be like an, oh crap moment in the head. And then, how do I get out of this? Family and friends. It's another cliche, isn't it? It's just one of those things that, family and friends. And that's what she says. So I think that's what's going on. But just going back, I know, Bob, it is ridiculous that no one knows how to delete a search. But she does say, I would not know how to go in and delete a search, which says to me, she does know the process, at least for deleting a search, that you have to go in. You don't phone up your cell phone provider and ask them if they can delete a search or something. She knows it's done inside the phone.
Yeah, 100%. And the great thing about trials that I love so much is that we always have the opportunity to come back after further testimony comes out and see how well certain testimony ages. So we're going to have the distinct pleasure of coming back after all the experts on Cellubrite and, forensic phone data come on and testify, and we'll hear what those folks have to say. And then we can come back and revisit Jen McCabe's testimony to see just how well it ages.
I will tell you now that when we come back, the next 10 witnesses for the prosecution could come up there and convince me that Karen Reid, with malice, ran over John O'Keefe, that this happened. They could show ring footage of it happening, from a video camera or so on. I will not believe a whole lot of what was in Jen McCabe's testimony around not concocting evidence, but having a conversation around the evidence around Kerry, around specifically deleting some phone calls, around the butt dials. Her language is just way too deceptive for that to be all in order and to go with her telling of things. That doesn't make her guilty or a guilty murderer. It says to me, there's something going on here, and I'm very interested in what that something is.
Yeah, me too. And like, I had so many conversations, as you can imagine, at CrimeCon with all the true crime nerds that go to those things. So we're all talking about true crime the whole time. And as you can imagine, Karen Reed in this trial was a major topic of conversation. And, you know, it's like I could think of a million things that cops would not want their phones being put in the hands of other cops to have them see to the world. And it may not be anything nefarious or having anything to do with this case. It could be anything. It could be affairs. It could be side hustles. It could, there's just, it's an endless list of things in which you can come up with in terms of why you wouldn't want somebody to have this information. And it's just, it's a fascinating trial. And you help us so much when you go through with this and you just pick it apart. And I love what you do, man. And I'm so thankful that you spent all that time.
A pleasure.
You repay the man by subbing and buying the book and following him on Twitter.
He also has a podcast, folks. Please. He's I think we went 3 hours the first time. This is like 5 hours just coming on with us. So please, you know, you could just click on the link. Also, if you want to see part 1, it's in the description. Check that out. Jack, first of all, I'm curious. You've analyzed Wendy Adelson and you've analyzed Jen McCabe. Just if you had to compare the two, or like who seems more deceptive, or what comparing the two of them, how would you describe that for folks who are familiar with Wendy Adelson?
I think Wendy Adelson is, I can't think of a better word to come to my head right now than a bit of a freak. You know, a very unusual personality, the type of person that you do not meet a lot. I think she's very manipulative. And I think that she was hiding lots and lots, but I think that is almost, in fact, we spoke about it when we looked at that podcast. I think that is her life. Her life is hiding. Her life is compartmentalized. Her life is showing people the facets that she wants people to see. Even some of that may be hiding up her involvement of what her brother did. Other parts are just who she is. So I think Wendy Adelson is almost unique. I think Jen is maybe an extreme version of people that we all know. Those people that will fight very hard for what they believe in, even when what they believe in might not quite be the right thing. And I think that she is, like I said, I think she's on a mission to implicate Karen, but I think she does believe that Karen deserves to be implicated. I don't get any feeling that she's throwing shade on, you know, or framing Karen. But she is not being very straightforward about so much that she's done. The searches, the butt dials, going around to Elizabeth Proctor's house. Whether that is just through sheer naivety that she thinks being honest about these things will get her in trouble, or not implicate Karen or something like that, I don't know. But yeah, she's an interesting one. But Wendy is, I could study Wendy all year.
Yeah, I mean, like, in this case is so fascinating because, like, the interesting thing about Jen McCabe, and say, for instance, every one of those witnesses is absolutely being truthful that John O'Keefe never came into the house that night. But what we also know is that no one in that house saw what happened to John O'Keefe. For them to all be so adamant that there does not exist another possibility of what caused John O'Keefe's demise is very, very interesting to me. I've been on this third theory because I say it all the time, is a lawyer, you know, the state wasn't there, the cops weren't there when it went down, and neither were the defense attorneys. So what we do is we look at the evidence and we formulate a theory, and it's nothing more than that because we weren't there. We don't know what happened. We think we know what happened, and there are very different things. To not even have any of these people contemplate the theory that maybe John O'Keefe slipped and crushed the back of his skull on the pavement, and, you know, some kind of wild animal comes on and picks on his arm. There are other possibilities that exist in the world. And for them to be so adamant that they've bought into law enforcement's theory of the case so fervently that they're going to come to every hearing and sit in there and then get on the stand with like every ounce of their being as if they know is interesting to me. So I don't know. It's like, I love watching it play out.
It's a weird old dynamic, isn't it? You know, it's just really like, yeah.
So to give everyone a little schedule for folks who don't know, Tomorrow we're gonna be on my channel. If you're on Bob's channel, we're gonna be on mine. We switch. Then Thursday we'll be on Bob's. Tomorrow is a full day. And then Thursday is a half day. But tonight, me and Bob are both portaling to Publicly Buzzed. If you like Alan Jackson, I'm going to be on with Steve, and he's going to be watching the Phil Spector trial, which has a young baby, Alan Jackson, as a prosecutor in California, has Linda Baden as a defense attorney. It's a whole thing. So tonight at 8, if you want to join us, we'd love to have you there. Jack,
and it's
tell the folks.
Great, Jay, because it's a fascinating thing to watch, because if you think, wow, I think Jackson's a little bit of a dickhead when you're watching him as a defense attorney. Watch him on the other side of the aisle. See if you get the same vibe from him as a prosecutor in a case. It's an interesting comparison, in terms of lawyers that have handled cases from both sides. I always love to watch it. And it's a fascinating trial. It really is. And Steve and Dan have been crushing the thing with Murder Church. So it's a special edition Murder Church, a Wednesday night or no, Tuesday night. Is it Tuesday or Wednesday? I've lost all track.
Tuesday. I lost it Tuesday because tomorrow's the trial.
Dude, like the whole weekend.
If you guys like me and Bob, you will like Steve and Dan, Publicly Buzzed. So please, we're trying to get them to 10K. And we're going to get Jack to 10K. Jack, what do you tell the folks what you got coming up on your channel?
It's a butt dial special this weekend. So it looks, it looks at the butt dial stuff that we've looked at with Jen McCabe, but also Brian Albert's butt dials, which exact same as Jen McCabe. A lot of interesting language around his butt dials.
Love
and
it.
You usually do your premieres Sunday at like 3 Eastern, or is it a different time?
It's Sunday at 3 Eastern, and I'm very impressed. I know that. I need a world clock above my desk or something like some tycoon, just so I can go, it's these times in America. 3 Eastern.
That's beautiful. All right. So listen, if you guys are not subbed to Jack's channel, I know we've said it and we're going to beat you over the head with it. Do it now. Order the book. Listen to his podcast. Follow his Twitter. Do all of it. If you guys love Jay and I's content, please, 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 it helps us so much. If you guys just do the favor of liking, subscribing, sharing, it really helps Jay and I grow the channel. We love bringing you guys what we feel is great content, and you guys can really, really help us get out there to the world by just doing those 3 things. They endlessly assist us in getting this thing built up to where, Jay and I can continue to do this for the unforeseeable future. And look, Jay, in terms of next week, I've got an exciting announcement. So if you guys are familiar with Joseph Scott Morgan of Body Bags, brilliant forensic guy. He's in the ME business. He's agreed he's going to come on with Jay or I next week. I'm trying to line it up. The dream is that we can get him on one of the days that they have a medical examiner on, so that he can translate everything we're hearing in this trial from one of the days that the ME is on. So I don't know if it'll line up, but he's going to come on. In a perfect world, it's on the day that they have an ME on. I'm going to keep a watch on it. Obviously, Jay and I will be back tomorrow. I'm going to be hoping with my fingers crossed the ME doesn't come on. But if it does, we'll rehash it with them. But so that's coming with us next week. We haven't pinned down a day yet, but that's coming. So just I'm really looking forward to that, because I love having experts on that can explain things that Jay and I just can't do.
Like Jack.
Jack.
Thank you.
Yes, absolutely. Give them a sub. Thank you all. Thank you, mods. Thank you, everyone. All the super chats and the memberships. We really appreciate it. And we will catch you tomorrow, guys. So thank you all so much. Thank you, Jack. Catch you guys on the next one.
Jack, you're the best, man. Thank you.
Thank you, guys. I appreciate it.